Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. What if the key to unlocking your fullest potential, healing your deepest wounds, and living with unshakable inner peace wasn't hidden in some far-off monastery or mystical tradition, but inside your very own mind, not just metaphorically, literally, right now? As you read this, your brain is changing. Every experience, every thought, every emotion leaves an imprint. And what if, through a practice as ancient as it is scientifically validated, you could deliberately guide that change? What if you could sculpt your mind the way an artist molds clay, not just for fleeting calm, but for permanent transformation? Welcome to the revolution of altered traits. This isn't another feel-good story about mindfulness. This is the hard science behind the subtle art of meditation. Backed by decades of cutting-edge research, brain scans, and the lived experiences of seasoned practitioners. In these pages, you'll discover how consistent meditation doesn't just make you feel better in the moment. It alters the very fabric of who you are. It rewires your neural architecture, rewrites emotional patterns, and reshapes how you show up in the world, from reducing anxiety and addiction to enhancing compassion, clarity, and resilience. The findings are clear. Meditation isn't about becoming a different person. It's about uncovering the best version of yourself. Calm, focused, kind, and free. Are you ready to move beyond momentary stress relief and into the realm of lasting transformation? Are you willing to explore how a simple daily practice can lead to extraordinary change, not just in your brain, but in your life? Because this isn't just a story of altered states, it's the story of altered traits, and it begins now. Altered Traits, Part 1. The Search for the Real Deal. Introduction, Beyond the Buzz. Meditation is everywhere, from mindfulness apps to CEOs swearing by 10-minute morning routines. It's gone mainstream. But amid all the hype, the big question remains: does meditation really change you in a deep, lasting way? Or is it just a trend with temporary benefits? In Altered Traits, Daniel Goleman, renowned for emotional intelligence, teams up with neuroscientist Richard Davidson to dig into decades of rigorous research to uncover what meditation actually does to your brain, mind, and body. And they're not interested in fluff. They're after the real deal. Altered traits, not altered states, not just a fleeting sense of peace after a few breaths, but profound, permanent changes in how we think, feel, and live. Chapter 1. The Science of Meditation. What works and what doesn't. The book begins by taking aim at a critical problem. Bad science. So many studies on meditation are plagued with small sample sizes, lack of control groups, and inflated claims. The authors sift through the noise and focus on only the most rigorous gold standard studies. They introduce the concept of the Olympic-level meditator, people who have clocked tens of thousands of hours on the cushion. Because if we want to understand the full potential of meditation, we can't just look at beginners. We need to see what long-term, deep practice does to the mind and brain. Key insight: some benefits of meditation, like stress reduction and better focus, show up quickly. But the really transformative effects, the ones that change your default way of being, require depth, consistency, and time. Chapter 2. Altered Traits versus Altered States. This chapter explains the book's title. When you meditate, you can enter an altered state. You feel calm, connected, present, but Goleman and Davidson are much more interested in something deeper. Altered traits. These are enduring personality changes, like becoming less reactive, more compassionate, and more resilient. Not just for an hour, but for life. They present compelling evidence that meditators are measurably less anxious. Long-term practitioners show lower activation in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Even in high-stress situations, compassion becomes a default, not just a deliberate act. The authors use the metaphor of trait transformation to describe this shift. It's as if your emotional baseline gets reset to a calmer, kinder, clearer place. Chapter 3. The Science Behind the Curtain. Davidson, who has been researching the neuroscience of meditation since the 1970s, shares how brain imaging studies have cracked open the mystery of how meditation reshapes the brain. Here's some of the key findings. Mindfulness strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the the part of the brain responsible for planning, focus, and self-control. The default mode network, DMN, the part that causes mind wandering and rumination, quietens down in experienced meditators. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, kicks in a gear, meaning that meditation doesn't just help you feel different, it literally helps you become different. This is where the listener starts to realize. This isn't new age fluff, this is cold, hard neuroscience. Meditation rewires your brain, and the changes are visible in MRI scans. Chapter 4. From the Lab to Real Life. Goleman and Davidson remind us that meditation is not just a lab experiment. It's about real people, real lives. They tell stories of monks who remain calm in the face of extreme fear, and meditators who develop an unshakable sense of compassion, even toward those who hurt them. This isn't superhuman. It's the result of training the mind, and it's accessible to us. Even short-term meditators can benefit. 8 weeks of consistent practice leads to reduced stress levels, better emotional regulation, increased gray matter in key brain regions. A few minutes of loving-kindness meditation per day can increase compassion and social connection. But, and this is crucial, the depth of the transformation is proportional to the depth of the practice. You get out what you put in. Part 2. Not all meditation is created equal. Opening tease. The meditation myth busted. Here's the thing. Meditation is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Many people think it's all about sitting still, closing your eyes, and focusing on your breath. But in truth, there are different styles of meditation, and they train your mind in different ways. And if you want specific results, you need the right kind of practice. So, in this part, Goleman and Davidson zoom in on the 3 core families of meditation, each with its own effects on the brain, emotions, and behavior. If you've ever wondered which meditation practice does what, this is where the fog lifts. Chapter 5. Focused Attention, Training the Mind Like a Muscle. The first style the authors explore is focused attention, FA meditation. Picture a classic mindfulness practice. You sit, breathe, and keep returning your attention to the breath whenever your mind wanders. It seems simple, but it's powerful what it trains. Concentration, cognitive control, awareness of distraction, what the science shows. FA strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for self-discipline and decision-making. It quiets the amygdala, reducing reactivity to stress and emotional triggers. Long-term FA practice improves attentional blink, the brain's ability to recover from distractions. Even just 2 weeks of daily practice can improve your attention span and working memory. Fun fact. One study showed that after short-term mindfulness training, participants had better scores on standardized tests and tasks that required staying focused under pressure. Bottom line, FA meditation makes your mind sharper, more stable, and better at resisting mental chaos. Chapter 6. Loving Kindness and Compassion, Softening the Heart. Next comes Loving Kindness Meditation, LKM, and its close cousin, Compassion Meditation. These involve sending well wishes, first to yourself, then to loved ones, strangers, and even people you find difficult. What it trains: empathy, altruism, warmth, and social connectedness, what the science shows. These practices boost activity in the brain's empathy and caregiving networks, particularly the insula and temporoparietal junction. Even short sessions of LKM lead to increased prosocial behavior, like helping others or donating money. Compassion training reduces bias and fosters forgiveness. One experiment had people practice just 7 hours of compassion meditation over 2 weeks, and they showed significant increases in helping behavior. Even when witnessing suffering, what's remarkable? In advanced meditators, the brain's response to others' pain shifts. From personal distress to a calm, compassionate concern, their emotions don't get hijacked. They remain open, steady, and kind. It's not about feeling bad for others. The authors explain, it's about being with others in their suffering, without being overwhelmed. Chapter 7. Open Monitoring, Watching the Flow. The third core style is open monitoring, OM. Rather than focusing on one thing, like the breath, you open your awareness to whatever arises, thoughts, sensations, emotions, without judging or clinging. It's like watching clouds float across the sky of your mind. What it trains. Meta-awareness, awareness of awareness. Decentering, seeing thoughts as thoughts, not truths. Cognitive flexibility, what the science shows. OM strengthens the anterior cingulate cortex, key for conflict. Monitoring and error detection. It reduces rumination, which is linked to depression and anxiety. It increases self-awareness and the ability to observe thoughts without identifying with them. This type of practice is especially helpful for letting go of negative thoughts, detaching from internal drama, building mental resilience in advanced OM practitioners. There's a calm clarity that comes from seeing thoughts as passing mental events, not commands. This helps them respond rather than react. Chapter 8, a customized mind hack. This chapter weaves all the practices together into a powerful insight. Different practices build different mental muscles. Want better focus? Train with FA. Want more empathy? Go with LKM. Want peace from inner noise? Try OM. Even better, you can mix and match depending on your goals, but Goleman and Davidson issue a warning here. McMindfulness is real. Many apps and teachers offer watered-down versions that may give short-term stress relief, but won't produce deep transformation. 2. Cultivate altered traits. You need consistency, proper guidance, intentional practice over time. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up. Part 3. The Path of the Adept. Opening tease. Mind masters among us. Imagine spending 10,000 hours or more training your mind, not in a university or a lab, but on a silent mountaintop, in a monastery, or on month-long retreats. What happens to the brain of someone who has meditated like an Olympic athlete trains for gold? In this part of Altered Traits, Goleman and Davidson unlock a fascinating question. What separates temporary states from enduring altered traits? This is the real story of advanced meditators, what they can teach us, and what science has discovered inside their minds. Chapter 9, Olympic-Level Minds. To find the answers, the authors turn to the most experienced meditators on Earth, mostly Tibetan monks and advanced yogis with 10,000 to 62,000 plus lifetime hours of meditation. These aren't just calm people. These are mental athletes with minds radically reshaped by practice, what the science shows. Advanced meditators exhibit gamma wave activity, the fastest, most synchronized brain waves. Even at rest, during compassion meditation, their gamma activity spikes to levels never before. Recorded in neuroscience, their prefrontal cortex shows far more sustained activity, even when not meditating, meaning greater baseline clarity, stability, and positivity. Key takeaway. For these long-term meditators, traits like compassion, focus, and calm are not states they enter. They're the default setting of their minds. This is what Goleman and Davidson mean by altered traits. Not momentary feelings, but deep shifts in personality, perception, and behavior. Chapter 10, Traits, Not States. To truly understand what makes a trait altered, the authors dig into the difference between state effects and trait effects. A state is temporary, like feeling calm during a meditation. A trait is permanent, like becoming a calmer person in general. So, how does a state become a trait? Through consistent repetition and neuroplastic change. The more we enter a mental state, the more likely the brain is to rewire itself to make that state more accessible, until eventually it becomes who we are. This explains why a beginner may feel peaceful only during practice, but an expert shows peace as a stable personality feature. Meditation doesn't just change mood, it can reshape identity. Chapter 11, The 4 Altered Traits. The authors identify 4 key altered traits observed in advanced practitioners across many traditions. 1. Reduced reactivity. Brain scans show a weakened amygdala response to stress or threat. Experienced meditators recover much faster from emotional upsets. They're not numb. They're resilient. 2. Heightened compassion. Compassion is no longer an act. It becomes a reflex, even under pressure. Advanced meditators act with kindness, not because they try, but because that's who they've become. 3. Unshakable equanimity. Deep practitioners develop an ability to stay undisturbed by pain, fear, or pleasure. Their happiness is not based on circumstances. It's rooted in inner stability for ongoing presence. They leave in a now, mind wandering drops dramatically. Their attention is laser-focused and fluid. They're deeply aware of each moment, yet not clinging to it. These altered traits aren't mystical or vague. They're measurable, observable, and trainable. Chapter 12. Can we all get there? Here's the big question. Do you need to become a monk to access these benefits? Goleman and Davidson say no. But there's a catch. You could develop these altered traits, but you need to go beyond the surface-level mindfulness trend. Choose the right type of meditation for your goals. And most importantly, stick with it. What makes a real difference is daily, long-term, intention-driven practice. Even 20 to 30 minutes a day can begin to shift your baseline traits. The authors introduce the idea of a dose-response curve. The more consistent and deliberate your practice, the deeper the transformation. You don't need to meditate for 30 years, but you do need discipline, guidance, and patience. Part 4. From Interchange to Global Impact. Opening tease, Beyond the Self. Now comes the real question. What good is personal transformation if it ends with just you? In this final section of Altered Traits, Goleman and Davidson zoom out, beyond the cushion, beyond the brain scans, and ask, can meditation change the world, not just the person? This is where science meets society, and the implications are staggering. Chapter 13, Meditation and the Body. More than just the mind. Most of us come to meditation for stress relief, mental clarity, or emotional balance. But science is revealing that the effects go deeper than the brain, biological effects. Reduced inflammation. Meditation reduces markers like CRP, C-reactive protein, and IL-6, both linked to chronic disease, lower cortisol levels. Regular practice leads to reduced stress hormone output, easing strain on the heart and immune system, better immune function. In some studies, meditators showed improved antibody responses after vaccines. And most fascinating of all, meditation can influence gene expression. Even brief but consistent meditation can downregulate genes linked to inflammation and upregulate genes associated with cell repair. This means long-term meditators may literally age slower, with more robust biological systems. Key point: meditation isn't just for mental health. It's a full-body intervention. Chapter 14. When the lab meets the real world. Of course, scientific studies are great, but what happens when meditation hits the messy reality of modern life? Goleman and Davidson explore efforts to bring mindfulness into schools to improve student focus and emotional control, prisons to reduce recidivism and aggression, workplaces to boost productivity and well-being, and even the military to improve resilience under stress. What they found: the programs that succeed tend to focus on consistent, long-term training, not just one-off workshops. Many fail when they're watered down or treated like a corporate buzzword. But when done right, mindfulness can create profound shifts in group dynamics, decision-making, and conflict resolution. One memorable example: a program teaching mindfulness to high-risk youth in inner-city schools resulted in lower aggression, better emotional regulation, and higher grades, just by giving them access to a new way to process life. Chapter 15. The right fit. One size doesn't fit all. Not all meditation is the same. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that mindfulness or breath awareness is the only method, or that it works for everyone. The authors break down 4 key families of meditation, each serving different goals. 1. Attention training. What it does: increases focus, reduces mind wandering, good for stress relief, ADHD, productivity. 2. Loving kindness and compassion practices. What it does: builds empathy, reduces bias, fosters prosocial behavior, good for relationships, service professions, mental health. 3. Mindfulness insight meditation. What it does: enhances self-awareness, breaks mental patterns, reduces reactivity, good for emotional regulation, anxiety, addictive behavior. For open presence, non-dual awareness. What it does: cultivates expansive awareness without attachment, good for advanced practitioners. Spiritual depth, the message, choose the method that fits your goals, don't just go with what's trendy. Chapter 16, The Journey of Transformation. In closing, Goleman and Davidson remind us of a fundamental truth. Meditation isn't a quick fix, it's a lifelong practice. You won't become an enlightened monk in 10 minutes a day, but you will begin to see gradual, meaningful, and even profound changes in how you experience life. The authors return to the term they've emphasized throughout: altered traits, lasting changes in the way we think, feel, react, connect with others, and relate to the world. These are the real benefits of meditation, not flashy states, but quiet revolutions of character. Final insights and closing thoughts. Here's what altered traits ultimately teaches us. Meditation is not about becoming someone else. It's about uncovering who you really are beneath stress, noise, and reactivity. The science is clear. Meditation changes the brain, the body, and the self. And with long-term practice, those changes can last a lifetime. But to get there, you need the right method, the right intention, and the commitment to keep showing up. It's not magic, it's not hype. It's biology plus behavior plus belief plus time. Sign off. Your invitation to begin. If there's one message to take away from this book, it's this. You don't need to become a monk. You just need to begin. Even a few mindful breaths, taken with full awareness, can start the path to inner freedom. And as you keep going, you may just find, like the great adepts, that the traits you once struggled for become the qualities you naturally embody. Because the real power of meditation isn't in what it does to your mind. It's in who you become when you keep going. Read the book to learn more. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries.